Nobody told me there'd be a dragon!
Hello, my trigger happy friends. My name is Stevie Cade, and I just saw the Dolittle movie this weekend, Monday, on Martin Luther King Jr. Day. And this movie has been bombarded with negative reviews, and I was not looking forward to seeing this, to be honest with you. My dad wanted to go see it, and he wanted to take the whole family, so I told my son, we're going to go see this movie for my dad, and we're going to like it whether we like it or not. But I was a little surprised when I went and saw this film because it was not terrible. It was nowhere near as bad as I thought it would be. Now that I have seen it, I went back and I watched Chris Stuckman's review for this film. Also, my buddy Chris Durbin over at the channel Durbania, I watched his review for this film. And I wasn't going to do a review, mainly just because time, but I just couldn't help myself. I felt like I needed to do a video defending this movie. So this isn't going to be a regular review style for me. I'm just going more on a rant here. But before I go on my rant, if you could hit that subscribe button and the little bell ding thing so you get notified every time I upload a new video. Thank you so much for joining me. Now let's defend Dolittle.
What a wonderful world.
So obviously, this is Robert Downey Jr.'s first appearance in a movie since the big Endgame finale. He has a lot riding on this. Can Robert Downey Jr. exist without the MCU? And in my opinion, yes, he can. People are saying that his acting was bad or his character was terrible and his accent was shoddy. I disagree 100%. I loved watching Robert Downey Jr. in this movie. I thought he really carried it through. I saw him putting a lot into it, and I enjoyed his accent. I enjoyed his quirkiness. He reminded me of Johnny Depp as Ichabod Crane, that very eccentric doctor that Johnny Depp did in that movie, and I really liked that type of character. I didn't see a problem with it at all. I stopped looking at Robert Downey Jr. as Robert Downey Jr. I started watching Dr. Dolittle instead as his own character, which is what I was able to do because Robert Downey Jr. was so different.
It's okay to be scared.
Nothing about his acting took me out of the movie at all. Nothing. And there are many parts where I felt like he was acting in a movie that I wasn't exactly watching, but we'll get to that here in just a little bit. The CGI in this film, I didn't have any problems with the CGI. I know Chris Stuckman said something about the CGI being wonky or just not there for him. Maybe if I watch it again, I'll catch some CGI problems, but in my first go around, just sitting down, just enjoying the movie as a whole, I had no issues with the CGI. Nothing took me out of the moment. I didn't think it looked rubbery. It was all very believable to me. The use of the animals and Robert Downey Jr.'s talking to the animals. If you haven't seen it yet, spoiler alert, Robert Downey Jr. talks to these animals, not in the way that we talk to other humans, but he communicates to them in animal language. So an outsider watching Dolittle, you see him making all these crazy animal noises and pretty much looking like a madman, which I thought was brilliant because that's what he is in this movie. He's a madman. Not only does he walk around, chirping like a bird or making gorilla sounds, but then he has results for it. So that's what solidifies him as a doctor that talks to animals. I see no problem with this whatsoever. Many scenes I really wished they would have shown him actually just walking around doing animal noises, like flipping back and forth of what we can understand and what people are actually watching that are also in the room. And I thought the use of the animals were fine. It's an adventure movie about a man who talks to animals, so I have no issues with them helping him being his crew on the ship. Suspension of disbelief, man. You're watching a movie about a man who can talk to animals. Who cares if these animals are helping him run his ship? That's what this movie is. You go to this movie for that. Don't go to this movie for that and then complain that that's in this movie. I didn't get that complaint. I didn't understand it. The comedy being outdated or the references being to the wrong audience. Okay, I can kind of get on board with that because that was one of the things I said to my son walking out of this movie, that some of the jokes were a little outdated. But in that defense, because I caught the references, maybe those jokes were aimed towards me and not the kids. I'm trying to please both audiences here because kids come with parents and parents need to enjoy the film also. The fart joke and the dragon. Okay, yeah, that was a little weird. I thought the whole dragon was a little weird. I thought that was a weird thing to put into this movie. It didn't seem like it fit.
Nobody told me there'd be a dragon!
And it kind of jumps on board with all the other things I didn't think fit in this movie. Because there's one known fact about Dolittle, and that is studio involvement.
This is very bad.
The studio came in, postponed its release date by 9 months, had 2 different directors do the reshoots. Jonathan Leesman, who did Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reboot, and Chris McKay, who did the Lego Batman, both came in to oversee the reshoots of this movie. That should give you a sign right there of major problems, and not necessarily for the original vision. So maybe Steve Gaghan, who did the original footage of this movie, was telling a different story. Now, rumors have it that they wanted to direct it more towards kids and that the original vision was a bit darker. And bringing in these 2 other directors and having them chop and edit more kid-friendly material in there chopped up the entire story because, as I said before, when I was drawn in by Robert Downey Jr.'s acting, I felt many times that he was acting for a certain style of movie that I was not watching. A much more heartfelt, much more adventurous, much less PG style Dolittle. Not saying that it wouldn't have been a great movie for kids. Honestly, if you're taking a big swashbuckling adventure, I think this movie maybe, I don't know, could have been more like Pirates of the Caribbean style, which would have worked for this movie perfectly. And bringing these other directors in to chop it up and add in more family-friendly kid material, I think is what makes this movie suffer big time. I think it fell into the same category as Josh Trank's Fantastic, David Ayer's Suicide Squad, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. Studio involvement. Because the movie that I saw, it was choppy. Like, we just moved from one section to the next section to the next section. I think there's a lot of this movie on the cutting room floor that probably would have flourished a lot better on screen than what we actually got. But who is the real audience for what we did get? Younger audiences? Of course, they loved it. I mean, when I was there, we were going to get tickets for an earlier show and we couldn't do it because it was sold out. So we got a later 4:30 show and there were barely any seats left. And by the time we got there, it was pretty much sold out. And it was all families. And I'll tell you what, the audience erupted. They were laughing at all the jokes. They even clapped at the very end because that's who this movie was targeted for. Now, I went with my parents and my son, and my mom and dad were laughing the entire time, and they raved about this movie after they left. I myself actually enjoyed a lot of this movie. Yes, it had its major problems. Is it the shitstorm that everyone's saying it is? No, it's not. As a family-friendly, fun adventure film, it does deliver on that. But I would like to see what the original vision was. But overall, I'm giving this movie a C-.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
But I'm not giving it a C- because of its acting, bad comedy, bad CGI, and I'm not giving it a C- because it was not a fun film. I'm giving it a C- because I believe the studio got involved in what would have been a great fun adventure movie turned into a fast food popcorn flick for the family, which ultimately bit them in the ass because it's not doing too well at the box office. I would really like to see how these numbers are in a couple weeks because even though it didn't do great over the weekend, again, when I was there on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the place was packed with families that really enjoyed the films. Quite curious to see how that number goes up in the next week or so. I wouldn't mind seeing a sequel handled correctly, and stick to an original vision that I believe Stephen Gaghan had. And I wish studios would stop getting so freaking involved and let directors direct their movies and tell their stories. And maybe this movie did have real problems. I don't know. I recognize similarities with this movie and other movies that have also been meddled with by the studio that potentially had better original visions, but they decided to ditch it out of fear of this, that, or the other, and make it more family fun, kid-friendly stuff. But this is just my opinion, and I personally wanted to defend Robert Downey Jr.'s acting amongst a couple other things in this movie. But let me know what your thoughts were in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some more of my videos right here. And as always, stay trigger happy, my friends. Peace.
Sorry, I farted.